because man's task is to make the earth after the model of heaven. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Man's project is to heavenize the earth. Man is made to transform the world from glory to glory, to take hold of it and break it down and remake it after the image of heaven.
Welcome back to the Reformed Reset. My name is Grant, and joined with me is my beautiful wife, Ericha, the weaker vessel.
Hello, everyone.
If you guys would please subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, hit the bell so you get notified every time we release new content. If you're in podcast world, subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Leave a comment on this video. Let us know what you thought of the content. All of that stuff helps us reach new listeners. The YouTube algorithm loves it. And word of mouth is also a very effective way of spreading the content. So if you find value here, then share it with your friends.
Right.
And, share it with someone you think, what, I think they're going to like this. I think they would find this interesting. Share it with them.
Or even if they hate it, that's fine too, because it still gives us a view.
Exactly. If you go down in the description below, there are links to our merch store, our Patreon, social media accounts, our email, takeholdstudios@gmail.com. You can send us an email if you want to say hello. You can find us on social media if you want to connect. We love meeting listeners/watchers and connecting with you guys.
That sounds creepier, watchers.
I know. But anyway, all that's down in the description below. So go ahead and check all that out. I think that's it.
All right.
So what are we doing this time, babe?
Today, I wanted to discuss what the CREC is.
The CREC.
The CREC.
Release the CREC.
Kind of feels that way sometimes in social media.
I think a lot of people think of it that way.
Okay.
Not the CREC.
We have a lot of people in our church that are very new to the CREC.
Mm-hmm. And over the last few years, the CREC has grown a ton. So there are a lot of new people. There are tons of new churches.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
The funny thing about this denomination, that's what it is. It's a denomination.
Yep.
Christian denomination. Is that it's like one of the most misunderstood denominations. There's like whole pages on Facebook devoted to the destruction of this denomination.
That's true too.
And her ministers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so maybe that's how you found us and you are curious and you want to know the truth. If that's the case, I applaud the fact that you're here.
Yeah.
I hope this is helpful for you guys. So, dear.
Yes.
You are a minister in the CREC.
That is correct.
And you have been, you've been in the denomination for how long?
Marked and noted. 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Yeah.
And you've been a pastor in the denomination since 2021?
Yep, so almost 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, almost 3 years. Cool. So, we're obviously going to be a little bit biased coming into this whole discussion. We love the CREC. It's home for us.
Right.
So take that for what it's worth. But I just want to ask you some very, basic questions. Awesome. This can be your opinion. A lot of this history stuff is just fact. And then maybe we could even do a CREC controversies follow-up episode.
Ooh,
that would be kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an idea for that, but I won't say it.
I can see your wheels turning right now.
Okay.
I don't know if all of you saw that, but things was clicking.
It's a little dim in here. Maybe they can't see. I'm a little dim right now, too. We've been under the weather in our house, so I'm drinking some tea, and hopefully we're on the mend. Okay, so what does the CREC stand for? That's an acronym. What does that stand for?
So right now, it means... There's a reason why I say that. Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches.
Okay.
And if you want more information, that's exactly what, that's the website, CRE Churches, I think .com. Anyway, .something. Google fills it out for us these days anyway. But you can go find out some information too. But it's Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. It used to be called, I can't remember exactly the year. I think it was the late first decade of after 2000, late somewhere in there, 2008, 9, perhaps is when they changed it from the Confederation of Reformed Evangelical Churches to Communion.
Why did they do that?
Some of it had to do with just the connotations of the word confederation. It just makes people think of the Confederacy in America and instantly has, are they tied to...
So they didn't want to have the negative connotations necessarily.
Well, it's funny because a lot of it is like, why doesn't the Southern Baptist Convention change their name? Because they have so many churches not in the South.
True.
But that is where it started. It started as a Southern organization. But now, since then, they're all over the world and they're not. Anyway, people ask that question all the time. So they wanted to avoid certain stigmas or associations that weren't representative of what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
So they changed the name. And if I'm missing something really important, I know there are other ministers who have a lot more longevity in the denomination that may say, this was also part of it. Feel free to let me know, and I will push that out. But one of the things that is very unique about the CREC is its Reformed Catholicity.
Okay.
And
what does that mean?
So by Catholic, what the denomination did was every church who's a member of it had to accept and adopt the first 3 ecumenical creeds of the church.
Okay.
So the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and the Chalcedonian definition, or the definition of Chalcedon, however you want to title it. Mm-hmm. But those were ecumenical statements of theology in church history. And rather than come up with our own special, unique, shiny, look, we have our own, like Baptist Faith and Message, which the SBC has. We just said, we're connected with church history. We're connected with saints throughout the whole world. And so we're going to adopt the same creeds and statements that they do. Mm-hmm. Christians have adhered to these theological creeds for, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years now. And so we see ourselves as connected with the church, the universal church. And so that's the Catholic, small c, Catholic Church.
Okay.
It's Reformed because beyond those 3 creeds, the denomination requires every member church to also accept and adopt one of about a dozen different Reformed confessions of faith.
So you don't have to list all 12, but
I don't know. So, for instance,
what are some?
Yeah, Westminster Confession of Faith is one. The 3.
There's variations within that, correct?
Yeah, because you could accept as it was written in 1646, or you could adopt the American version. And yeah, there's various versions, a few that they would accept. The 3 forms of unity is another very popular statement of faith that churches adopt, which is the Heidelberg Catechism, the Belgic Confession, as well as the Canons of Dort. You can adopt the 39 Articles of Faith, and that was the early Church of England statement of faith. You have, there's a Reformed Evangelical statement.
So you have a good variety.
Yeah, that one's a little more randomly made. What are some other famous ones? The Savoy Declaration, I think that's one you can adopt. There's the, I'm blanking now. Actually, well, never mind.
Okay.
I'm sorry, everyone, for that little stutter step in my own brain just there. But that's where the Reformed part of them being Reformed Catholic comes from.
Okay.
So they see themselves as part of the Church Universal, and that's seen in adopting the historic creeds. And then the Reformed part of it is we do hold very distinct theology as far as Reformed theology goes. Think 5 points of Calvinism, covenant theology. Some of those things are very distinctly Reformed. And the guys who started the denomination back in, I think it was 1999, that's how they started it.
Who were the guys who started the denomination?
I know Doug Wilson was pastoring what was a Baptist church, and then he had become Calvinist, and then covenantal, so Paedo-Baptist, and there was a couple other ones. I think Randy Booth, who's in Texas, he's pastoring in Texas. I believe he was another one of the original. I think it was 3 or 4 churches.
Okay.
And they were looking for a denomination to be a part of and to be a member of, because they saw Presbyterian church government, which we'll talk about, I think, in a second. They saw that as biblical and needed and important. They wanted accountability. They wanted camaraderie, fellowship. Like, they wanted to do kingdom work.
So why didn't they just join a Presbyterian denomination?
It's the Paedo-Communion thing, I believe.
Yep.
So the Paedo-Communion topic had been debated and dealt with in many of the major Presbyterian denominations and Reformed denominations, I think in the 80s, maybe the 70s, 80s, somewhere in there, as well as the theonomy topic. The denominations did not accept it. They
didn't accept either one.
Neither was an accepted practice or whatever.
So basically, they didn't have a home anywhere else.
Yeah, so they weren't Baptist anymore, but all the other fellow Reformed folks kept them out too. So they didn't have anywhere to go, and
so it wasn't like they were looking to build up their own thing necessarily. It was that there was no place for them to go.
Right, and I think that's one of the things that can certainly be said about the CREC is it is very unique. There is a certain kind of culture and theological package, I'll say. You don't find it everywhere else. You find pieces of it. You find small Reformed denominations that are Paedo-Communion, but then they're also not a high church or have a high covenant renewal worship conviction or something like that.
We'll talk about that in a little bit too.
You know, but the CREC certainly has sort of this this thing about it that you can, I think, the more God blesses it and it grows, people are able to point out like, oh, that sounds like a CREC church. They're like this, and there's like a set of distinct markers.
So what are those distinct markers, and like what makes the CREC so distinct aside from just Paedo-Communion, which is a big one?
I think one of them is its view on eschatology, and
in the fact that it's optimistic.
Definitely optimistic, and this isn't a requirement, but it just ends up being sort of part of the ethos.
You can't help but notice that everyone's pretty happy when you walk through a door.
And then you realize, oh, they're all post-mill, and they have, you know, great joy in the fact that Christ gave us all these great promises, and we actually believe he'll fulfill them.
Yeah.
Here and now, not just someday when he returns, but here and now, inch by inch, we advance the kingdom. And he's poured out his spirit to empower us to do that. He hasn't left us alone to do that. That's why that happens. And so they have, you know, they're quite a jovial folk, you know.
It's true.
But that's one of them. I think it's split-ish. We talked about this on the vestments and collar. In our denomination, you have a very high view of the church. You have a high ecclesiology, and sometimes that can be seen in the fact that churches have a very robust liturgy, and you see vestments and all that other stuff. It's like, wow, they take it very serious, and that's not a like fail-safe indicator of someone who actually, because you have plenty of liberal nonsense in our country where they've got robes and everything, but it's a shell. There's no substance. But even the churches, for instance, Christ Church in Moscow, that maybe they don't have those things, but the worship is still incredibly robust and full of scripture, full of substantial preaching, and a high view of the sacraments and all that kind of stuff.
Covenant renewal worship.
Right, and that flows right out of that. Again, I know we've encouraged y'all to read it before. We've talked about it at our Covenant Renewal Worship series. We have a playlist, so if you hit playlists wherever you're at on YouTube, there's a worship one. Jeff Meyer's book called The Lord's Service. Phenomenal book on worship, and he lays out biblically the case for covenant renewal worship. He talks about what worship is for, because we get that wrong all the time. We might do an episode on that in the near future.
Yeah.
But he lays out a lot of really important things in that book, and that's, I think, I haven't gone anywhere in the CREC where they don't practice covenant renewal worship. I think that is something that we that's a distinct marker. It's what's the word I'm looking for?
Distinct.
Yeah, it's a distinctive of
Christian education. Speaking of memorials,
yes,
that's also huge. You will find in any CREC church that you walk into, Christian education is very important. Whether it's a Christian, private school or homeschooling, classical schooling, whatever. But there is a huge emphasis put on Christian education.
That's probably another reason why these men didn't fit in the other denominations, was their conviction about Christian education. The stance is that it's not just a public school system. It is a government school system. They are indoctrination centers for the state, and that is their whole goal, is to indoctrinate the next generation of its citizens. It's a catechism class. That's exactly what it is. And these men see it, and they had been fighting against it. And so that is one distinctive in the CREC, is that Christian education is it's a command that that parents must obey and ensure that their children are getting a Christian upbringing, that their kids are brought up in the fear and admonition of the Lord, that they are being raised in a culture of Christianity.
I think also you will find that people love to sing. I don't think I have been in any other denomination where men are roaring the Psalms, and women and children are singing parts, and it's just so cool. Psalms, hymns, right?
That's true.
Sometimes a sea shanty or two.
That's right.
I feel like it's a very unique culture.
Yeah. And that, I think, goes back to the conviction that worship is warfare. That's connected to the high view of worship and the high view of the church, that what the church does on the Lord's Day is not just to get my feels all taken care of so that I can take care of things during the week. It's actually how we tear down the high places and smash idols, is declaring Christ as King in song and prayer, and hearing him declared in the preaching of the word, and partaking at the King's table, where he has all the victory, right, is because of his sacrifice. So because of that high view, the singing becomes important. And the singing becomes a powerful weapon against the enemy. So when we sing as a people, when we sing as families at home, and of course, the more you do it, the louder you get, and the more joy that there is. And then you have fun with it, with, like you said, you're singing parts and doing all these different things. And
some of us have more skill than others, and I'm not saying that
not every singer's created equal.
But we all enjoy it. We really do.
Yeah.
Something that I think is very unique in a CREC worship, and this is not necessarily true, or how do I say this? I feel like this could be true in other denominations as well.
Okay.
But it isn't necessarily, and that is the idea that when we say we are going to worship on the Lord's Day, what we don't mean is we're going to have some singing, call that worship, and then have the pastor teach us a sermon, and then we're done. Where it's very chopped up in that way. And if you go back and you listen to our Covenant Renewal Worship series, we kind of get into, this a little bit more. But we really do see the service as a whole as something that is worshipful,
Yes.
right? That we are going to renew covenant with God, and that there are important pieces that he has prescribed to us that we should do in that act, but that the sermon isn't elevated to a weird place where it's like the most important thing, or the music isn't the most important thing, or, you know what I'm trying to say? It's all of it together.
Well, those two directions, most evangelical churches have fallen on either side, or in either one of those ditches. Is the music becomes primary, right? How many people did we hear where we like, oh, where do you go to church? And they say, oh, we go here. The worship there is so amazing. It's like you're at a concert.
Yeah.
Or it's the reverse, that the pastor, his sermons are just amazing. It's one or the other. And it's the two ditches of the Enlightenment. One is rationalism, where it's our faith is made up of our thinking, right? So there's the sermon side of it. Or you're the romanticist, and you're you discovered truth and beauty and all that through feelings, through
being stirred up.
Yeah, being stirred up and feeling the right way, or whatever it is. And so you have these two Enlightenment ditches, rather than the Christian thing, which is that you worship God, body and soul. It's both. And so we need to sing and be full of joy during all of that, and you need to hear God's word preached to you.
And take the Lord's Supper, which is also
and you need to touch and taste.
Very unique, I think, in our denomination. It is weekly communion. I don't know. Is that a memorial? Weekly
communion? I don't know.
I've never been in a CREC church that didn't have communionists like weekly.
No, I'm pretty sure that's just baked into it.
Yeah. That's
just part of it. It might be in the Covenant Renewal Worship Memorial.
I feel like we have some homework to do.
Yeah. But that is unique. I'm trying to think of the traditions that do have communion weekly, and they didn't always, but Anglicans have communion every worship service. Catholics do now. They didn't before.
Yeah, that's true.
They do now. And with everyone receiving bread and wine. I think Lutherans do, but Baptists don't. Most Presbyterians don't. Most Reformed denominations don't. It's monthly.
There's not emphasis placed on the sacraments like that.
No. Nope. So a weekly communion, but also a celebratory practice of the Lord's table. It's not this downer, dim the lights,
weird memoriam kind of
flog yourself before you come to the table kind of thing.
What about church government?
Oh, that's good. Okay, so it's pretty much a form of Presbyterianism, and we call our they're called presbyteries. However, we're not like the OPC or the PCA. Pastors are not members of presbytery and sort of sent to the local church, and there's a reason for that, and especially in early America, there was a whole lot of justification for some of these things, but that's not what we do.
So, for those of you who may not know, a pastor who is ordained in the denomination, they have a credential, I guess you could say, your credentials. They are held by your local church. Right. So each church holds the credentials of their pastor,
right,
as well as his membership, I suppose. Are the two things the same? They're not the same.
Yeah, I guess so.
Are they?
They would transfer at the same time, I think. But one is attached to him being installed as a pastor as well. But ministers can stay members of a church, and their credentials stay under the purview of that session as well. So let's say he's just a member there and he doesn't have a call.
Isn't that what, did Jim Jordan do that for a while?
I don't know.
Am I not thinking of someone else?
Maybe. Yeah.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But that's what you're saying when you're talking about
Yeah, rather than being members of presbytery, and their ordination held there, the pastors are members of the local church that they're actually pastoring, and their credentials are held there.
Right.
So that is much more like a Congregationalist historically than Presbyterian. But we have presbyteries, and then...
So what is a presbytery?
Okay, so presbytery is when the ministers within a certain geographic region meet together, and when they meet together, and then a presiding minister or what do they call them in PCA, like a stated clerk or something like that, calls the meeting, that's presbytery.
So it's like a district meeting almost.
Yeah, and it's important to state, because we get this confused sometimes, I think. Presbytery is not just a long-standing, like a ever-standing entity. It happens when they all meet and they do business, and then when presbytery adjourns, it's over.
Okay.
You're still part of that region. Does that make sense?
It's not like they're sitting in court waiting for the next time. Yeah.
Right.
Because they're ministers. These ministers have jobs, right?
Right.
So...
but presbytery is something that is official when you're meeting.
So how often do these presbyteries meet?
I think the requirement is once a year, and most meet twice a year.
Okay, so we're part of which presbytery?
Bootser.
That's right.
It's
so
fresh.
We're like the New England.
Right off the press, too.
Yeah, we're brand new. We're like babies.
Yeah, we were part of Augustine Presbytery, and it covered a lot of geographic region. But just in the last couple of years I've been here, we've added 5, 6, 7 churches, and so we got too big. We had to divide and multiply.
Okay, so then within the presbytery, there is a PM, correct? What does PM stand for?
A presiding minister.
Okay.
Who is not a bishop. Although some accuse...
Cute, though.
It's kind of cute. He's not a bishop. He's a pastor of one of the churches within the presbytery.
So who is our PM?
Harold Guptill.
Okay, so Harold is a pastor of a church. He pastors every day, right? Throughout the year.
Counseling people, preaching,
doing
teaching.
the pastor thing.
Right.
And then he
awesome.
also acts as a PM. And what are the responsibilities of the PM? Some of them, obviously it's not exhaustive.
You'd have to ask Harold.
Maybe we should ask Harold.
But they field questions, churches that are interested in joining the denomination. If the presiding minister of council, I don't know if we're going to get that far, but probably if people are interested, they'll
We can break
listen
this
to
up
it.
into parts, because this might be really interesting for people who don't know. Because if you don't know, how are you ever going to learn?
Most people, it's true. Most people go to the website and just email the head person.
Yeah.
Which is Pastor Yuri Brito right now, the presiding minister of council. And what he'll do is say...
He's like the manager of the managers.
That's right. He, not an archbishop.
That's also a cute name.
And he'll say, oh, where are you at? Oh, you're in,
this area.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to connect you with Pastor Guptill.
Right.
Because that's that presbytery. And so if you're interested in joining, that's the guy you need to connect with. He'll tell you when the next presbytery is and probably ask you to be a guest if you're serious about joining or planting a church, whatever it is. Presiding minister does that. The other thing the presiding minister can do is accept cases, but that pastors are dealing with in their church, whether it's a disciplinary thing. Most of the courts of the church are there for adjudication. I mean, that is what it is for. Like when Moses appointed 70 elders and placed them over 50s and 100s and all that, it was to try cases. It wasn't just for helps ministries.
So if a member of a church really thinks the pastor is doing a crap job and he just really can't get his life together, they can reach out to the PM. Their PM? Yeah,
if the leadership at their church is all united in dismissing their complaint, then the next court of appeal, basically, right, is to talk to the PM and say, hey, I think I have an issue with my pastor.
Right. So he fields a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Yep. He's also kind of a shepherd of shepherds. The PM is someone the pastors at the churches can call and say, hey, can I get some advice? You know, usually the person elected to the role of presiding minister has many years of experience. And so they can be that. They can do that role of shepherding the shepherds, which is, I mean, just...
It's a weighty role.
And from my experience, it's so awesome to have somebody like that. It's so healthy to have that kind of mentorship. That sounds too businessy. There's something more to it.
It's a relationship.
Yeah, it's
awesome. So you've got the PM over presbytery. How many presbyteries are there?
There was 9 now.
Because
I think
we just had a split, and then wasn't there another one?
We had a multiplication.
Right. Well, I mean, call it what you want. It was.
And Knox did too.
Okay.
So they added Kuiper Presbytery.
9?
I think it's 9.
Okay.
9 or 10. I want to go back to the PM. The PM also has a PM pro tem.
Yes.
So we elect a presiding minister and a presiding minister pro tem. And that's just somebody that helps the presiding minister plan and coordinate presbytery meetings, because there's a bunch of logistics that go into that. And also, if there's something that happens and the presiding minister can't fulfill a certain duty, whatever, the PM pro tem can fill in.
And those can be elders. They don't necessarily have like a ruling elder. They don't have to be like a pastor, correct?
Yeah, normally it is though. But before it's been you've had either one. Yeah.
Okay, just curious. Okay, so you've got your presbyteries. They all have PMs. They meet at least once a year, sometimes twice a year.
Yep.
And then there's something called council.
Right.
Okay, explain what that is.
So every 3 years, 2 delegates from each presbytery
So our Bootser Presbytery would send
2 delegates.
2.
Yep.
How is that chosen?
The presbytery chooses it, or the PM chooses it.
Okay.
I think the presbytery. I think we choose it. I think the PM suggests 2, and then we just vote yes or no, or you know, I've seen it where one is but the other one is like I can't do it or whatever.
Sure.
So you discuss it.
So it changes every time. Yeah.
So then so it was 14 delegates because we had 7 presbyteries, so now it'll be 18. The council's getting big. And that is the next level of leadership.
It's like the Supreme Court.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, and they meet, we said every 3 years,
Every
correct?
3 years, they meet, and the things that they discuss and decide on and vote on are things that will end up changing policy or affecting the whole denomination. So like if a memorial changes, or like this last council, there were memorials that were being read and discussed that will be implemented in another 3 years.
Or even the presbyteries splitting / multiplying, that had to be approved by council, correct?
Yeah, council discussed it. Council looked at the suggestions of, whatever, and then they voted on whether good plan, let's roll with it. But yeah, that was a denomination-wide decision, right? And this is very Republican in the true sense of the word, where we are the people are the ones electing up, and you get fewer and fewer leaders as you go up the ladder, but all the way down it's elected and it's representative leadership.
So then the leader of council, what is he called?
Oh yeah, so then you have the presiding minister of council.
Right, okay.
So that's the PMOC, and he does not have a vote on whatever council decides. He's just the one that runs the meeting and runs that show. Okay. And there's a PMOC pro tem as well. And they serve for 3 years, I believe. I think PMs do as well. But yeah. So, and that's a really big job.
Council meets every 3 years.
Yeah. And that's a super important job. Again, like I said, Pastor Yuri Brito, we just had him on the podcast. You guys know. But I mean, he probably fields phone calls and emails. I know Pastor Virgil Hurt said every week he was getting a handful of.
He was the previous PMOC.
And he just constantly being contacted with interest into the denomination.
And these men are pastors, right? So this is a big responsibility that they have. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how the government works. Just like in the U.S. courts, if there was a complaint that was lodged, you could appeal to your presbyteries,
to the PM.
Thank you. And then if you were unhappy with that, you technically could appeal to council as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So there are a lot of checks and balances in this system. It's very healthy. No one just gets to, get away with whatever.
Yeah.
It makes corruption hard.
Yes. Exactly.
Not impossible, but it makes corruption very hard, certainly.
Well, yeah. Men are pretty good at sinning. So if we want to,
Okay, so who is welcome to join the CREC? You said that our church has grown, or churches have grown, right? Our church basically doubled since we've got here after COVID. And then that's not unheard of. Like a lot of churches have grown. A lot of stories. There's tons of church plants, tons of mission churches. Right. We talked a little bit about like the requirements, but like, could you be a Baptist and join the CREC?
Yes. And but what you have to adopt in your church is the Second London Baptist Confession of Faith, 1689. So, yes, in that sense, but also a very particular kind of Baptist. And again, that would mean accepting all the historic creeds, and it would mean accepting that confession of faith as your church's doctrinal statement. But then also, which is sometimes a very tall hurdle for Baptists just because of the nature of their theology, in the CREC, you have to accept and recognize the membership status of other CREC church members. So where that gets sticky is that in a Baptist church, you don't recognize children as members of the church because they're not baptized. And but in a Paedo-Baptist, Paedo-Communion church, children come in.
Which are almost all of the churches in the CREC.
Right, which is like well over 90% of But children are baptized right away. They're members. You're a member of the church and you're at the table. So that's just very common. So if you're a Baptist, you have to sort of understand that you just have to recognize the status. You're not the one conferring that status on the. I mean, you could. We'd love you to, right? But when you receive them, like by way of transfer, let's say they moved states because of a job and they saw there's a CREC church.
So the Smith family in Oklahoma is now moving to Virginia, and their kids are all baptized, taking communion, all that good stuff in Oklahoma. They moved to Virginia. The only CREC church here is a Baptist
1689 CREC church. And they say, we want to transfer our membership from Christchurch, Oklahoma to Trinity Reformed, Virginia. And the 1689 church would have to recognize the whole family as members and recognize their baptism as valid and all that kind of stuff.
And permit the children to the table.
Right, because they're members. They're baptized members, and there would be no reason, right, to keep them, to bar them.
So if they're willing to do all those things, then the Baptist church is welcome to be in the denomination.
Right, and that's part of really pressing that Catholicity thing. And this is why it's so important. The people I get to know and I'm able to continue to develop these friendships. This is a huge piece in building the kingdom and not creating division where there doesn't need to be division and that sort of thing. And I know this might sound harsh to some, but Baptist theology is sectarian, and I'm not talking about the people being intentionally this way, although you could be, but the theology itself, when you really go down to the roots of it, it has an individualistic and sectarian nature to it.
That's a distinctive.
Yeah, that's kind of how it runs. So typically what's happened, this is the story you always hear, is that those who are attracted to the CREC, the doctrine, the culture, and all this stuff, typically they don't stay Baptist very long because they're starting to see that Catholicity, and usually they're starting to see the covenantal nature of the kingdom anyway. And so it just, it takes time. Sometimes when we're learning theology, it just takes some time. And then it all kind of, the dust settles and you're like, oh, I see it now.
Then you can see clearly, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm that's one of the things I love about the CREC is really pushing that Catholicity button and pushing that as important.
And it's in the inverse is true as well. If you are a Baptist family coming to a CREC church that practices paedobaptism, paedocommunion, you are not forced to baptize your children or give them communion. There's patience. Once again, you could argue we've had several families come into our church as Baptists, and they don't stay Baptist very long. And it's not because we're pressuring them or threatening them. It's because they learn, they grow, like they're being taught well by their pastors, and they come to a conviction and whatever. But they're welcome. They can become, members. They can happily exist in our church, and they're loved, and they're seen as every bit as important as the Paedo Baptist family.
It really has been really cool to watch some of those families learn and grow that way. And you always, whenever I try to make an analogy, you're like, stop, Grant. But
I'm scared right now.
But a tree, if you want it to grow, you just water it and you take care of it. You don't pull on the top of it to make it grow tall. But with the Baptists who come in, it's like, well, no, we're not going to force you and pressure you and pull you, make you grow already. No, water, care for it, love them. You're more than welcome to be here. We're so happy that you're here. Bring a dish to share. That's what we do here. Your family when you're here, and we just love you. And also, when are you baptizing your kids? But it's like, it really does become, I hope they comment on this video, but it becomes just a real friendly time of discussing and talking theology. And you just make it a fun place to do that without condemnation and without a side eye or anything, and
there's no ulterior motive to it either, right? Like it really is like, we love you, and just like with anything else, we think the Bible says some things, so we're going to speak to it. But like, if you disagree with us, that's fine. The Lord will work that out in your heart.
You can be sure with your
That's what I tell my friends all the time when they're wrong.
Funny.
I'm like, that's all right. The Lord will work that out in your heart.
The Holy Spirit will work that out in you.
Now we say it to each other.
Well, it's like, there's a certain, there's a healthy degree of ribbing with other people, where you're giving them a hard time or whatever. And we've got it back from the Baptists too, in certain ways.
Oh yeah.
And then, but then, like, I'm an adult, so I'm just going to stop here and then just let it go.
Well, and because it's not personal. That's the thing. It's not a personal, it's not like they're sinning against us. So it doesn't need to be personal.
That's right.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. So that's good. So either way, and I've seen that many, many, many times, but either way, there is an acceptance. And that's, again, it goes back to the Catholicity thing. You're a Christian. You are part of the body of Christ. And we might not see eye to eye exactly on everything. And that's all right. Can we learn together? Can we continue to build the kingdom together? And then, all right, well, let's go.
I think that you will find in the CREC that the general churchgoer is very intelligent. very well read. They are immensely funny, and they love humor, and they don't take things personally. They can joke and be joked about, and they don't have a problem with that because they are confident in where the Lord has brought them.
Yeah.
And I think that is what makes the denomination, like one of the things that makes the denomination so strong is that the people are so strong.
Yeah. It's like there's just a maturity.
Yeah, like a Christian maturity.
Emotional maturity.
Yeah.
You know, with an identity. Maturity and identity. Another thing, this is kind of connected to something we already talked about, but another thing very distinct about CREC churches, you know what this is?
Children in the worship?
We love kids.
Yeah.
I'm
really glad that we were on the same page there.
Yeah, I know.
That could have been really weird.
Yeah, I'm like, no. We love kids, not just in the in the worship service. Like, even thinking about, oh yeah, there are churches that aren't family integrated, huh? But that's not even a conversation that's really had much. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
What do you mean kids wouldn't be in the worship service? What are you, nuts?
Yeah.
You know? Of course they are.
We have a room in the back of the church.
Yeah.
It's like a little office type space with a few toys for kids.
It's for robust dialogue.
For for nursing moms and to get your child's heart right before the Lord. But yeah, you're gonna find kids in our worship service. You're gonna find kids around every Sabbath table. You're gonna find kids probably underneath things. And the other day I was at church and I was standing in a doorway looking into that office actually. Yeah. And I had a child, because there's like a table standing next to me, and there's a child underneath it, and they grabbed my legs. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a kid down there.
I got her!
You'll find kids popping out of everywhere.
Guys, I got her! That's so good. I love looking out when we sing the doxology and our hands are raised, or Gloria Patri, or whatever.
That's another, we talked about singing. We didn't talk about that. That's another very distinct...
what
series, like the doxology at the end of the service, everyone's hands are raised, or in the middle of the service, wherever you put it,
or the Gloria
Patri.
It's very it's good, very normal.
Yep.
But looking out, so as the pastor up there looking out and seeing, parents holding a little kid who's too small or short or anything, so they lift them up and hold them, and their hands are still up too.
Yeah, the baby's hands will be up.
It's so good,
That's how you know that, like, we have dumbed children down, and we have just made them... We actually have bought a lie, like a cultural lie, that children are basically worthless and stupid.
Yeah, a curse, not a blessing.
Until they can actually be fully functioning, they're basically worthless.
Yeah.
But there's a baby able to lift their hands.
And sing the whole song. They all learn it.
Or some version of what they're singing, but they think they're singing along.
Yeah.
Even the baby who always sits behind us, she gets into it. I hear her.
Yeah. No, it's true. She's super cute.
She's cooing along.
Yeah.
It's adorable.
We love kids. That's a huge CREC thing. Love kids. Love the noise. All throughout the way. It doesn't bother us, where I know that it does other traditions.
Yeah.
But no one even, it's like I don't even hear it anymore, honestly.
Yeah, you really don't. You don't hear it.
If I end up looking over, I just smile like, yeah, well, it's a kid.
Yep.
That's what they do.
Yep.
And it's like, there's that video going around social media all the time where there's something, and I think it's from Batman or something, and they're looking at each other just nodding, and it's like, it's kids, and take care of it,
Yep.
All right, everybody. Well, that's a bit about the CREC. Yeah. I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I had fun.
If someone would have asked us before we joined what we thought a reformed denomination looked like.
Yeah.
We came from PCA world. Now we're in this world. I feel like this would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah, you think so?
I think so.
Good.
I think it does make sense, you guys.
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't be scared, and you should not be part of those scary Facebook groups. Just don't go there.
Yep. It's just fear-mongering. And once you go actually look into it yourself, it's not at all like the way they make it sound.
We'll pray about whether or not we should do like a CREC controversies
thing. Yeah, that might be a whole...
That might be a can of worms we don't want to open.
Yeah, maybe not.
But let us know if we should.
Yeah, let us know.
Maybe we'll have someone smarter than us come on and talk about it and answer the questions for us.
All right. Sounds good. All right, guys. On that note, though, if you have further questions that maybe are not related to controversies or just other CREC things in general,
it's a lot to say.
Leave a comment below and let us know. And perhaps we will have a way to answer your question. So, if not in a comment, in another episode or something. But we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take hold and reorder creation by first reforming your home. This has been the Reformed Reset.
But on the basis of grace and on the finished work of Jesus Christ, the project is back in force, and the destiny of a new transformed world is assured.
I just put the sourdough in the oven too, so I've got like 40 minutes.